Love and Justice, based on 1 Corinthians by Reverend Tess Baumenberg. Love is kind with people, but impatient with justice. Love is assertive and respectful. Love listens to the anger of those who experience oppression, without responding, without defending, without interrupting, without explaining. It listens with compassion, seeking always to understand. Love is slow to anger, especially at the start or end of life, and with anyone who the world discounts. Yet anger can be a part of love. Consider the force with which parents defend their young. Love fears for those it loves, for what it loves. When who or what it loves cannot defend itself, love rises to defend. When those it loves have the power of defense, it takes their lead with humility and courage. Love assists, empowers, and frees. Love's anger rises to meet injustice in considered ways that help correct it. Love is willing to examine itself, its thoughts, actions, and bias. It recognizes one's power to harm or to be a part of a system of harm, with or without awareness, but once aware, it can only intend to make amends, to right the wrongs, to change the systems that legislate hatred. Love is always willing to change, always to learn, always to heal. Love rejoices in truth and in equity. There is no limit to love's steady presence or its holding us gently but insistently to what is right.
Sister Felicia Niolia Sadunaitė was a remarkable Lithuanian nun who passed away last year. I met her secretly through family friends when I was a 20-year-old college student studying in Soviet-occupied Lithuania. My father was part of an IREX International Scholar Exchange to teach for a semester in the Soviet Union, so I studied for a semester abroad at the University of Vilnius. In terms of a broader historical context, Vladimir Putin was a KGB agent at the time. He was assigned to tracking foreigners and foreign consulates in Leningrad. He monitored our trip personally as we had entered the USSR through Leningrad, and we eventually found out that Putin was our tracker. Sister Niola's clandestine work was with the Chronicle of the Catholic Church in Lithuania. It documented the persecution of Catholics under Soviet occupation. She was imprisoned for 3 years in hard labor camps for her efforts, followed by 3 years of Siberian exile. She was abused and tortured in a variety of ways for her work. She asked me to smuggle the current copy of the Chronicle to the West, which I did. When my father found out in Helsinki what I had done, he was totally pissed off. I had never seen him so angry in my life. Now, Sister Niola had this incredibly good humor and very quick wit. In another context, she would have been a great stand-up comedian, someone telling a story at a story slam, and the entire audience would have been like rip-roaring in their bellies. At her trial, she said that she loved the prosecutors, the judges, and the court officials. She said that she did not blame them for their actions against her. They were perpetrating the evils of an inhumane, unjust system. She asked them, and I quote, "I do not understand how you, whose conscience is burdened by the spilled blood and tears of so many innocent people, can sleep at night," end quote. And she concluded, quote, "Thus, let us love one another and we shall all be happy. He alone is unhappy who does not love. My heart is filled with love for my fellow man, since loving others makes everything else easy. End quote. After her imprisonment, she always preached the same message of compassionate, selfless love for all people, including her persecutors and oppressors. Love is the only way to overcome the hatred and evil that exists in the world. The Reverend Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. also preached a message of compassionate, selfless love. Brother Martin, as he was called by those close to him, together with other civil rights activists, were arrested many, many times for their peaceful, nonviolent protests. At other times, like at the Edmund Pettus Bridge, peaceful protesters were attacked by police and National Guard with tear gas and sometimes bullets. Those were brutal acts of state-sanctioned violence against peaceful Americans in our very own country. In 1962, Brother Martin and local religious leaders were organizing nonviolent sit-ins, boycotts, pickets, and marches against Birmingham, Alabama, which had a series of discriminatory segregation laws. They defied an unconstitutional court order that banned all peaceful protests. They were horribly abused by police while in jail. And then he told his followers not to pay his bail so that he would remain in jail. This drew national attention to the unjust arrests. Brother Martin's most famous quote from his letter from Birmingham jail is, and I quote, "Injustice anywhere is a threat to justice everywhere. We are caught in an inescapable network of mutuality, tied in a single garment of destiny. Whatever affects one directly affects all indirectly." End quote. That sounds so beautiful and so much like our shared Unitarian Universalist value of interdependence. We are all interdependent on one another. None of us is an island. None of us is alone. We are in life and love together with each other. After this and other releases from imprisonment, Brother Martin advocated love in the face of hatred and government persecution. Again, I quote, "And we still advocate nonviolence and passive resistance and still determined to use the weapon of love. We still have the attitude of love. We still have the method of passive resistance, and we are still insisting emphatically that violence is self-defeating, that he who lives by the sword will perish by the sword." End quote. In the last phrase, Brother Martin is quoting Jesus. Sister Niola's and Brother Martin's stances about love and justice are still relevant for us today on the eve of the presidential inauguration. This week, in our own United States of America, the Senate held a hearing for the Secretary of Defense nominee, Pete Hegseth. He was asked, how would he respond if the incoming president asked him to shoot peaceful protesters in the leg? This is the exact same quote that the President Trump had asked his Secretary of Defense, Mark Esper, during his first term in office. The nominee, Mr. Hegseth, was also asked if he would decline to carry out an illegal order from the president. As we all know from the news media, he offered a waffling response. He rejected the very idea that Trump would ever give an illegal order and he effectively refused to answer the underlying questions. How does his non-answer square with our country's long and ugly history of state-sanctioned violence against its own peaceful citizens? This holiday weekend, we need to remember Brother Martin's message that injustice anywhere is a threat to justice everywhere. As a native-born United States citizen, I do not want our country to become a new Soviet Union that would prosecute nuns like Sister Niola for publishing a chronicle of religious abuses, or Brother Martin for preaching love, truth, justice for all. Our shared Unitarian Universalist value of love has deep roots in our religious tradition. Historically, Universalists believe that no one is going to hell because universal salvation was founded in universal love. Out of love, our Universalist forebears in faith worked to bring heaven on earth and not in some afterlife. So there's this really great story about the Reverend Hosea Ballou. He was an early 19th century Universalist circuit riding preacher. He would go from one church to another church to another church to another church, each weekend preaching at a different church. And he was traveling with a Baptist preacher. Universalists and Baptists have a long relationship, Deacon Ali. I forgot to mention that to you before. So they were arguing about theology. And the Baptist said, and this is a famous quote, "Brother Ballou, if I were a Universalist and I feared not the fires of hell, I could hit you over the head, steal your horse and your saddle, and ride away, and I'd still go to heaven." Hosea Ballou looked over to him and said, "If you were a Universalist, that idea would never occur to you." Why? Reverend Ballou and the Universalists believe that all are loved and that our purpose in life is to love all and to spread that love wherever we go and whatever we do and whoever we meet. Violence and stealing are abhorrent to universal love. Universalism taught and Unitarian Universalism continues to teach that we are all bound and intertwined with each other by transforming love, by loving one another. Love is the essence of our lives, individually, in our families, in our local communities, but also we bring that love into all of society and seek to transform society by love. So in our political climate today, we may consciously or subconsciously or unconsciously imagine divisions between us and them, enemy and friend, the good and the bad, Ukrainians or Russians, Palestinians or Israelis, Republicans or Democrats. But we are still all connected together, living together, in forming a community on this planet Earth, in Brighton, Michigan, in Livingston County. That interdependent web of all existence connects us together by love, love for one another. So out of this transforming love, Brother Martin sought to create the beloved be loved, be loved community among all peoples, all races, all religions. Only in mutual love for each other can we create a community that sustains life for all and supports everybody. Reverend King described such love as a sort of love that makes no distinction between people. It is an overflowing love that is spontaneous, unmotivated, groundless, and creative. And in his language, it is the love of God operating in our human hearts. We Unitarian Universalists share the same dream with Reverend King. Love is the power that holds us together, that brings us together, that unites us together. Love is at the center of our existence. Love is at the center. It is at the heart of our shared values. Everything that we do, everything that we think of doing, everything that we want to do, whatever ideas that we have, even if we want to flick someone off on our way to church this Sunday morning, as I was told by a congregant earlier today, filter all of those ideas in love and figure out a way of responding to whatever happens in our lives through the prism of love. And that love we have in our hearts, it's not something that we need to teach ourselves how to do. It is innate to the human experience. We are accountable to one another through love, through the spiritual discipline of love. So on this Reverend Martin Luther King weekend, on this weekend of the inauguration of the new president, let us go out into the world and love one another.